Stephen succeeded in holding his own against the first wave of rebellion in 1138. His attempt to confiscate Robert of Gloucester's English lands and to take over his castles involved him in heavy fighting. With the aid of ships from Boulogne, he was able to capture Dover Castle from Robert's castellan Walchelin Maminot. His army in the West Country took Castle Carey from Ralph Lovell and Harptree from William Fitzjohn, but he failed to capture Bristol. Well, there's no William Fitzjohn here anymore, but I am in Harptree, West Harptree as it happens. The battle that Stephen succeeded in was actually at East Harptree. But what's so interesting is that this provides a reminder of the great link we have to our history in this nation. That's why I've been writing this series of pieces about people important in our history who've been forgotten, ignored and overlooked. This time, I'm writing about Matilda, with great help from a wonderful book by Marjorie Chibnall on the Empress Matilda. Who was Matilda? Why does she matter? Why should we care about her? Well, Matilda was the daughter of Henry I. She was born in 1102. Her mother was another Matilda, but her mother, crucially, was the daughter of St. Margaret of Scotland and brought back into the English line, the Norman and then Plantagenet line, the Anglo-Saxon kings. Margaret and Matilda were both descended from Alfred the Great. So you get the authority of one of the greatest kings of England, another of the people in my series of important figures, coming in to Henry I's line. But Matilda was a girl. They didn't even bother recording her precise date of birth because it was the boys who they were concerned about. And she had a brother, William. Her brother, William, was the heir, but he got killed on the White Ship. At the age of 20, he was drowned, and it was said of Henry I that he never smiled again after that. And that left Matilda as the heiress. Now, what matters about that is that she was abroad at the time. At the age of 8, she'd been betrothed to the Holy Roman Emperor, as he wasn't yet then called, Henry V. So she was away, she was abroad, and she was meant to be having children. But then Henry V died without issue. There was no heir to his empire, and Matilda was brought back by Henry and married again so that she could have more children. She was married to Geoffrey of Anjou, who was considerably younger than her. Her first marriage, she's a child married to an older man. The second marriage, she's a mature-ish woman married basically to a schoolboy. She had to go along with all this. As was said of her, she was great by birth, greater by marriage, and greater still by her offspring. Through her father, she had her marriages arranged. Her first one that made her empress, a title that she kept for the rest of her life. She clearly liked being empress. But she was now the heir. But women had never succeeded in their own right to be queens regnant in England before. Actually, the hereditary position of the monarchy in the 11th century isn't, indeed in the 12th century, wasn't that clear. So William the Conqueror takes it by force and was illegitimate, but by the 12th century, legitimacy is more important. So Henry I's illegitimate children, illegitimate sons, are ruled out, but it doesn't necessarily go to the eldest child. Bear in mind, Henry I himself was a younger son of William the Conqueror with a brother, Robert, still alive, and he got the crown simply by being quick off the mark. And that is what happened when Henry I died. Even though he had had all the important people of the realm promise that they would back Matilda, when he died, Stephen gets to England first. He gets to Winchester, takes the treasury, and is crowned king. The Pope, Innocent II, approves his coronation, and Matilda is slightly left out in the cold, even though all these people swore to support her. What does she do? Does she rest on her laurels? Does she just accept that she is married to the Count of Anjou and she can carry on like that? No, of course not. She comes to England, she went to Arundel Castle, and from there she began to stir up opposition to Stephen, who was now the anointed king. She has some very good supporters, particularly her half-brother Robert, Earl of Gloucester. And initially, it goes extremely well for her. Stephen is defeated at Lincoln, at a siege in Lincoln, taken prisoner, held in chains, leaving the field open for Queen, as she would like to be, Matilda, who heads to Westminster and hopes to go into London. This point, it doesn't work. London's complicated. You have the citizens of London who take one view, and you have the Castellan of the Tower of London who takes another. Matilda backs the Castellan and the people won't support her. So she actually has to leave London ignominiously. And from then it becomes harder. She gets to Winchester. From Winchester she's besieged and flees. But here people really see her mettle, because she flees with a small number of knights, including Brian, who's a particular friend of hers, astride. She was a queen, an empress, riding astride. She had some of the habits of manliness that was expected of rulers. She gets away, she gets to Oxford, she's besieged again, and she escapes from Oxford. Oxford, it's hard winter, snow on the ground, the frozen Thames, and with only 4 knights, she basically walks through the enemy lines. So she's free, but Stephen is also now freed at this point, a little bit earlier, in exchange for Robert, Earl of Gloucester, her half-brother. And so Stephen is back, and Matilda has lost her chance of becoming queen herself. But even her opponents, even the friends of Stephen, are impressed by her. So it's reported in the Gesta Stephani, the works of Stephen, that the Countess of Anjou, that of course is Matilda, who was always above feminine softness and had a mind steeled and unbroken in adversity, fled ahead of the others to Devizes, accompanied only by Brian and a small escort. Thereby, she and Brian gained a title of boundless fame since. Now, that is the boundless fame that I'm trying to remind people about today, because once she had lost the ability to win the crown, she's in England for another few years. England settles down to a period of difficulty, of anarchy, with every castle trying to command its own area, and eventually she goes back to Normandy. Now, Normandy was the other territory that she'd inherited from her father, at that point being operated by her husband and then by her son, Henry II. He is trying to get England back and is fighting battles in England. She clearly has great influence in Normandy. She's signing charters, she is approving things, and Henry says that his mother will make people behave themselves if they don't volunteer to do it. Clearly a close relationship between the two. She is an important advisor to Henry as he increases his strength. And through her, Henry has the claim to the crown of England, which he then eventually succeeds in getting. He agrees that Stephen will be king till the end of his life. Stephen's son Eustace dies, so he has no suitable heir to take on. Stephen adopts Henry, and the crown moves in the way that we are so familiar with in the old rhyme of Willy Willy Harry Stee, and then on to Harry II, and then Dick John Harry III, something all schoolboys used to learn. And that is the next Harry after Stephen, who gets the throne, and his mother's still advising him. She corresponds with Thomas Becket. If she had lived, possibly Becket wouldn't have ended up having the grisly fate that he did, and all the damage that was done to Henry II's reputation because of it. So what does all this tell you about Matilda? Why does she matter? Isn't she just another queen consort mother? No, she's much more important than that, because she establishes the right of the crown to pass through the female line, and indeed suggests that a woman can hold the crown herself. Technically she didn't, but that's what she was fighting for, and the success of her son retrospectively gave that more credibility. And so without Matilda, you don't get Mary and you don't get Elizabeth a few hundred years later, and you potentially have the Salic law, so you have a different inheritance of the crown, as they did in France, and indeed for the Roman Emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor, who couldn't be a woman, as was a problem in the 18th century with Maria Theresa, who was the last legitimate survivor in that line at that point. She had lots of children, which solved the problem from then onwards. So Matilda is important, yes, absolutely, because of who she was born to, who she was married to, and who she was the mother of. But her importance was in what she herself did with that. And in her time, everybody was important because of their birth. Becket possibly came up from humble origins, but coming up from humble origins could not make you a king. It could make you an advisor. She was powerful, absolutely, through her family, but she used it in a way that has had a transformative effect on the British monarchy. The current king is descended from Matilda, and she made it possible for his mother to be such a successful queen, Victoria, Anne, Mary, obviously, with William, Elizabeth, and the First Mary. It's quite a remarkable period of history. It's a very unsettled one. It wouldn't have been much fun to be standing here when battle was raging in the 1130s and the 1140s. It was known as the time of anarchy, when law and order wasn't upheld and people pillaged round their castles to try and get themselves a bit of wealth. But what came from it with Henry II came from Matilda. She is one of these really very important people. So I hope you'll subscribe to Substack and have a look at a bit more detail, or actually buy Marjorie Chibnall's wonderful book, because it's all in there.